Hello, everybody. Welcome on the Lights on Data show. Today, we're going to talk about how to enable data as a product through the data mesh.
Wow. And I have the pleasure of introducing our guest, Dr. Alex Borek. He is a data leader, best-selling author, and renowned keynote speaker. He's the co-leader of the Zalando Data Foundation and is driving the data mesh transformation across all business units in the Zalando group. He also holds a PhD in engineering from the University of Cambridge. Wow, that's a very impressive resume. Hello and welcome, Alex.
Thank you so much, Diana and George. I'm so glad to be with you. I'm a big fan of your show.
Thank
That's
you.
lovely. We're very happy to have you as well, and we're very excited about the conversation today.
Yes, let's get right into it, shall we?
Yes, please.
I thought since we have a very global audience, I also might want to say something about Zalando because outside of Europe, I think it's not so much known. So we are basically a fashion online retailer, the biggest in Europe, serving 50 million customers basically. So a lot of people
Wow.
are actually buying their fashion stuff. So usually, I think there's a tendency towards women probably. So usually every woman in Germany buys in Europe almost, you would say, buys at Zalando, but in general, like, it's quite a consumer brand these days. The fun stuff is if you have 50 million active customers that are actually shopping with you, you have a lot of data. And so we had to find ways of managing that data at that scale. And we had also to find ways of innovating fast while growing and while becoming also quite a big company. In the beginning, you're a startup and you can move fast because there's not much communication overhead. But as you want to continue delivering products and data products as you grow, you have to find ways how to do that agile at scale. And I think that's something we've been working on throughout the last years. I've been working in data for now 15 years, a long time now as a data leader before at Volkswagen Group as well, in a global data leadership role. And one thing that I started recently, also inspired by you guys, is actually a podcast where I'm interviewing other data leaders. And the idea is here to find patterns of how to do data transformations faster and better, and maybe avoid some of the learnings, either like failures or learn from those things from other people. They learn from their own failures. Because often on conferences you see always glossy slides, but you don't see actually the real thing, the real story. And I'm trying to do that there. So it's called Data Masterclass in case you want to drop by. But what I really want to talk about today is how we at Zalando came into adopting data mesh, or I would say even co-inventing data mesh. We've been in general in data management through now since the CDO, Chief Data Officer role came up, we've been going at least 6 big paradigm shifts, from regulatory driven data governance where the CDO role emerged to big data innovation where we started to see data as the new oil and we started to pump everything into data lakes where it was possible, and having data scientists as the unicorn role. Going then to Internet of Things where we also captured data from the real life environment, like from trains or from machines in the factory. And then using all that data wider, not only by the sort of very privileged data scientists, PhD type of guys, but really we went through data democratization, self-service BI, and then public cloud. I think that changed quite a lot our landscape because now software engineering came in, databases could scale much faster and so on. And I think it gave us a lot of opportunities. And then the last year, AI, where we went from data science to really packing that into software and into DevOps cloud environment where it can really scale and run, recommendations, like size recommendations, product recommendations, better search at scale. That's what all e-commerce or based companies are doing. You build ML into your key customer offering, basically. I think to these 6 paradigms we've all been through, and probably you recognize that in your personal journeys with other companies throughout the last 10, 15 years.
I think that's a great description of that evolution and the shifts that we've seen in the data space. And at the same time, all of those 6 are still there and they're very much a focus for many organizations, and they're being impacted by regulatory practices. The big data is still there, data democratization, internal things depend on the company, I guess. But more and more are really embracing what they can get out of that data. And of course, the public cloud is here to stay, not here to go away. And AI, more and more, especially in this past year, it's coming into the hands of the public as well, which is very exciting.
You're absolutely right. And I think the fascinating thing is it's not like we're moving from one era to the other and we can forget about the last era. It's almost
Right.
like piling up. I think
Adding to the complexity.
it does. Yeah, it does. So I think one thing that we learned throughout the journey as Zalando, but I think also as data practitioners globally was that you really start quite centralized with data, but after a while it doesn't scale. So companies start to, and we've done the same. We really then put our central teams and divide them across the business units. So we're closer to the business units. We've done that with the same with tech to have really tech everywhere. And then you're much faster. You're solving a lot of business problems. You're innovating super fast until it becomes a little bit of maze of data, because everyone is innovating so fast independently. And that decentralization trend goes back into centralization. And
Mhm.
people start to say, okay, now we need more data governance. We need, and of slowing down the innovation again. And sometimes people are putting them back into a central unit. We decided to not do that. So we decided we want to find the right balance between centralization and decentralization, where centralization helps you to have a platform where people can work with each other, but still the value is created mostly decentrally. I saw many companies rather than trying to find the balance to go really from one swing to the other, and every 3 years it's changing. I don't know if you've experienced something similar.
Yeah, and not just with this, but I think it goes into how teams are being created as well, and what that structure is centralized. There's some sort of a hybrid, but especially with data governance, there's definitely that swing, like you mentioned. And yeah, I'm looking forward to learning more about what you found to work.
So I get a few years back, everyone thought the data lake is solving all our problems. I don't know if you saw that, but we
Yeah,
definitely
first was
thought that
data
at
warehouse and
Solano.
data lake. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. First data warehouse, but then we said, okay, we need to innovate. Everyone wants to do big data. We want the data scientists should be free and use everything. Hundreds of data consumers should be able to access all data in the company. So that was the dream, and everyone is just making money out of data, out of that new org. Now, the reality in most companies was that the data consumer has no clue what is inside the data lake if you pump it up. So either there's nothing in the data lake, or like in our case, we put everything into the data lake, 20 petabytes of data, and then you don't find anything anymore. Yeah. So the dream quickly turned into some, yeah,
nightmare.
a challenge in reality, I would say.
Agreed.
So the reality of our data in most companies was, though they have the data lake, deploying algorithms takes still lots of effort. Getting and understanding data is mostly a huge obstacle, and usually you need to rely on people that you know. Data quality is not fixed at source. ML teams are very well equipped, usually with money, to do stuff, and they do that at sync and not at source. So every ML team scrubs the same data ultimately again and again, which is not efficient. And data sets are basically stored super redundantly and inconsistently because everyone runs their own pipelines in such an environment where everyone has data engineers. And data lakes become really muddy and KPIs are dirty, basically. So how do we close the gap? And here the data mesh comes in. And this is the journey we've been on since 1 to 2 years. We really said data lake is fine if you have all data, but we should know what is really important. And we've done an analysis, and it's almost when you go on Amazon. So on Amazon, there are a few things that are top sellers, and it's same with your data, usually in the data lake. There are a few data sets that are incredibly important for, and in our case, we didn't know who's actually providing the real source of that data set because everything was stored in the data lake. So we started to now work with the domains last year to have everyone basically saying, okay, those are the top data sets that are coming from me, and I'm truly responsible for that. And I'm provided platform service, so which means data set as a service to the rest of the company. So it's still in the data lake, but just a much higher standard. So we have a standard with regards to data as a product. We have an accountability in that domain, but also the honor to serve the rest of the company and the recognition for that. And they are getting the tools and the help to really do then data quality, inform everyone if there is a change in the data, which domain people who are close to the source can do much better because they know the source is changing. So those people know much better if their data changes. If all our customer data is changing, that has an impact on our algorithms that are running on the website. So it's quite important to know and understanding on which data are products they're building on top of. It's quite important because if you have metrics that are, for example, reported out for sustainability, you need to understand the chain where it's coming from. So you can then do prepare for audits, be better prepared, and all these kind of things. And so basically, what we learned to deal with is instead of having central data teams that are trying then to create those single sources of truth, to have every domain owning and providing data as a product to the others in a high quality. And then measuring that with red, yellow, green, and then creating standards on that data platform for how you share that and how you make it interoperable. Because there are certain dimensions or certain IDs that everyone should adopt to make people of other domains being able to use that data. Now, the beauty of that is that it's a network effect. So you cannot start with one domain. I think the data mesh cannot be started with one data product. What you need is several business domains starting at the same time, because it's a give and take model. Like, why should I, as customer care, share data with all the others and put so much effort in providing that? Because product means you invest in something. Product means there's a market for it, somebody's using it, but you're investing in that. And you cannot invest in everything. You invest in those products where you think those are worth it. But if I invest in it as customer care, I need to get some, which means that somebody in marketing side on logistics needs also to invest in relevant data sets that are important for me, and I get something back. So this way, everyone chips in and you get sort of 10x out of it, because there are 10 other business areas that are now providing data in a much better way. Before, your applied scientists or your analytics teams had to really scrub the data or explain to their business leaders why things don't match up or don't
Okay.
have.
And who is everyone that's contributing to this? Who are all these people? Are they mostly the consumers? Are they the data scientists, data analysts? Or is it all stakeholders that would be dependent on that data in the organization?
So basically, it depends on the type of data product. So we have 4 types of data products. Source data products coming from transactional systems. Here we have usually the engineering teams responsible for the microservices that they build are responsible to share that. Or if it's an ERP or a CRM system or something like a packaged software, then those engineering teams that would be running that
Okay.
software package. Then we have curated data sets or curated data products, and those are more the ones coming from data warehousing, data lake, data engineering teams. So more aggregated data, you could say, or refined data. So the BI teams, you could say, or data engineering teams. And then we have metric data products. That's the whole idea of metric store, could say here. But ultimately, a metric store is nothing else than actually
Right.
adopting the product concept here. And then we also have ML data products, sharing back results and also features from as data sets. So those would be then our applied science teams that would share that. So yeah, and the analysts, of course, share the metrics plus also reporting data products, which are dashboards.
And just to clarify, maybe I'm getting ahead here. Data product is really anything that's shared and that's curated. It's being put together for that consumption for others.
Yes, but it can be basically very close to the source. So that's the source data product. It's still not it doesn't mean that it's exactly following the schema of your operational database. Okay, there could be still some transformation steps, because your operational database, that's of your local implementation logic. It's like it should be hidden. But what you share with others should maybe you rename some columns to make it more meaningful for people. You make some columns invisible that are irrelevant for the others. Like, it's not just a dump, and that's the big difference. You think about, how do I provide that really source of truth of that transaction to the rest in a most meaningful way?
Makes sense. Thank you. Sorry, I derailed you from your float there.
Not at all.
We're going to take some comments here as well. Dan Everett was saying, with all the problems that we're having, just build a warehouse, a lake, a fabric, a mesh. We'll just solve everything.
I mean, obviously, this is not a technology problem. It was a change management problem, like and an identity change. Like, people who were responsible for checkout are now responsible for providing also order data as a product. That's a mind. What am I responsible for? What's my personal mission my mission as a team? That is changing. It's not culture change in the sense like, hey, you need not to change. It's more, let's have a conversation how we create a better data operating model in our company. That's the conversations we had, and we had lots of them. And then we said, okay, this is what we agreed, and we shared it out, and we started with those teams that were most excited, basically.
So can I ask, whom did you have the conversation with?
You could say everyone.
That's good. That's great, actually.
Like, we had 60 VPs and directors representing all the business and tech areas. there, and our chief architects and so on, in that conversation as core contributors of our data strategy. Because essentially what I'm showing is a key element of our data strategy. And we involved everyone in that conversation because we said we need to change how we work with data to make it more scalable. The whole point is actually reusability. If you have lots of data engineers across, lots of analysts across the business, which is of course a luxury position to have, I know, but you run into the fact that a lot of people are creating things twice. And it's not the problem that they're creating twice, but then everyone who's looking for stuff, they don't trust it because they see it twice, they don't know what to use. And sometimes they build it in a third time and a fourth time. And it's adding to complexity, it's adding to platform costs, it's adding to people cost because they don't know where to find stuff, where to reuse stuff. So the whole point of data product is has to have Lego bricks where you can build together, so you can much faster build new stuff.
A nice image in my head with that.
This is something that Tom Radman taught me, that only two moments matter in the life of data. It's when it's produced and when it's consumed. And everything else should be invisible, like the iPhone and iOS, which makes a lot of complexity going away for the consumer. So really the platform is supposed to help the producers to share data as a product in the most easy way. Cognitively take any cognitive complexity should be taken out of the process, and the technology should be as easy as possible to use. And of course, there are different producer types or producer groups, like I said, engineering teams or data engineering teams or analysts. So depending on who you have, you should have, it's quite important. We learned to provide them a way to share data as a product in the way that is easiest for them. Like if they know Python, like our engineers, software engineers usually use Python, then rather give them ways to share that, use Python code than Spark, because that's for normal software engineers, it's an additional effort to learn Spark and things like that. So really making it as easy as possible and finding easy ways to standardize stuff in the platform itself as you share product, as part of CI/CD pipelines, as part of building features into your analytics tools that make it easier to share stuff with others, and building as much governance that's of our learning into the platform, because that's, to reduce the overhead for people. Not everything can be automated, but there's a lot of things you can automate. And I would say it's a continuous journey of automating governance. Also, there's things like data protection, governance, and antitrust and all these kind of things. And of course, the platform must be easy to use in a way you need it locally for the consumer and producer, which as self-service as possible. And consumers go in there and they have almost the feeling, I get it directly from the producer. So like I don't get it from the central data team, but I'm getting it from marketing, and I trust it because it comes from marketing. Marketing provides it to me. The platform is more, it's a platform.
And so on that note, Greg here is wondering, how do you manage the data duplication bloat? So if maybe multiple producers are actually overlapping on some of that data, and it's not quite there, do you manage that through the platform, or do you manage that at the producer's level?
So first of all, I think it is anyway a reality when you're working at such a scale. Through the last years of data lake and everyone having data engineering capacities, that's just a fact of life that you have those. And data mesh doesn't say you're not supposed to have them, but what it says is find out what are the most important ones, and for those clarify which are the leading ones. You can still use the others, but which ones are the leading ones? So we basically identified top 100 data sets, and those are the leading data products for the company, representing customer interactions, representing our partners and brands, representing our sales events. So every six events, our articles, those are our tier one. So we work with tiers. And for that tier one, we have basically those high standards where we tag it, where you see as a consumer, hey, this is something that I can trust. While the other stuff is long tail, and like at Amazon, you can also find the long tail stuff, and that's good. You can find really the special, or maybe from a applied scientists team, really somewhere in the corner of the business, they have something really special, another twist on consumer data, customer data, and that's great. It's like on the Amazon bookstore. That's what consumers appreciate. But as you search, you want to find Harry Potter first when you're looking for Harry Potter.
Exactly. And on that note, Greg has a follow-up, and if you can talk a little bit about what data management, data governance tools you're using to help with all of that.
Yeah, we are working with Colibra's data catalog, and we are working with quite a big stack spanning lots of different tools, Databricks, Informatica. On AWS, we have Data Lake. So yeah, so I don't think it's big surprises here.
Yes.
We also leverage open source quite a bit. Apache NiFi, so Airflow and Superset. And so it's really a mix of commercial and open source.
And speaking of open source, do you think you'll make use of the Chat GPT API?
I prefer to answer you differently on that one. We're getting into a time where data is becoming more important than the AI because AI becomes commodity. More and more, the quality of your AI depends more on big science groups creating very powerful stuff on data that is out there, on all data in the internet. And it's then the only difference that you can make in terms of your competitive advantage is to use that with your data, because then you get unique results that are really specific for your industry and so on. I think we should double down, all data leaders or companies in our data strategies, on creating that uniqueness, because data is the only thing that is ours. And I think that's for me the biggest learning. I think that machine learning engineers in your own company will still play a role for those things that are absolutely unique in terms of AI. But I think that we will see a revival of sexiness of data.
Right. Yeah.
So that's and I think that strategy changes the landscape at the moment. One can buy Chat GPT and access to OpenAI. So what's the difference now? That's not your competitive advantage.
Yeah. And again, I would like to enforce that message that we should take care of our data first, and then we can look into fancy AI and other stuff. But so many managers really jump in at, oh, we need to enable AI capabilities in our companies. Let's invest in that. But they're not willing in investing in data quality. And that's so frustrating. That's a lot of resources that are not spent correctly.
I fully agree. And I think we should really be loud here as data leaders and data influencers towards business executives that AI is more and more commodity, and that it's really about the data.
Yeah.
I think that's the key message.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Kingsley here is wondering if you have any papers, articles, videos, anything that you recommend on really creating data as a product.
I would recommend Data Mesh in Practice. It's an O'Reilly book that was written by one of my colleagues at Zalando, Max Schulze, together with ThoughtWorks a while back. Because the data mesh paradigm was invented at Zalando. This is where it all started, together with ThoughtWorks a few years back. I think they wrote a nice piece where you see how this can work out it worked out for us, basically.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that recommendation.
Can I jump in here and just mention that you are also the author of books that are really bestsellers? Can you share a little bit about the books that you wrote, you contributed to?
Oh, yeah. I have 4 very different books. So my first book was actually on data governance. So my PhD research a while back was really in applying risk management methods to data governance. Because the big problem that we had in data governance, why are we doing it? What's the impact? And the difficulty with data quality is that it doesn't always have an impact. It sometimes has. There's a likelihood, there's a risk that it has an impact. And so back then, my PhD research, I basically spent 3 to 4 years in figuring out at different companies, mostly in the engineering sector, manufacturing companies and utilities, if your sensors are wrong, how much impact how much risk does it have? I worked with, for example, Scottish Water, and they would think they decide to create maintenance on their pipes and dig out many miles of pipes 10 years earlier than needed, then that's millions of money. But there's a likelihood only behind that. So there's a risk. It's not a deterministic impact. And so with risk methodology, you could really create that business value score, or really quantitative business of data quality. So that was my first book, Total Information Risk Management. And then I've written one back then when I was at IBM about the whole cognitive stuff. When Watson came up, it was called Marketing with Smart Machines. And later on, I was a few years at Volkswagen Group and setting up the group digitization. And we were changing everything this company does within 5 years. Set up teams of several thousands engineers to build software for the car, for online retail. And based on that, I wrote a book together with my wife, which is called Driving Digital Transformations Through Data and AI, which was really from that practitioner's perspective, how you can drive digital transformation with data. And my last book was Ultimate Data and AI Guide. And that's 150 FAQs on data analytics and AI. So it's really for everyone who wants to start, or who maybe knows parts of, but you want to have. It's almost like a lexicon, like Wikipedia, and it's used actually as a textbook, for example, in South Africa at a university, and like all students of
Wow.
that year use that as their textbook for learning about data analytics. Yeah,
Congratulations. I think that's amazing to have this kind of impact.
we are so lucky when that. So we were, and by the way, a funny story is that you cannot buy that at Amazon, because we sell that book mostly via Amazon. So you cannot buy that in South Africa. So we printed the book for them and sent over like tons of packages.
That's really, really nice.
There's a different type of pipeline there that happens. All right, Alex, where can people follow you and find your content?
I do a lot on LinkedIn. I have on YouTube the Data Master YouTube channel, also Data Masterclass. On Spotify, you can also find Data Masterclass.
Thanks. Well, thanks so much for being on the Lights on Data show and sharing with us what really works at Zalando in converting data as a product through the data mesh. So we appreciate all the insights and best practices that you share with us.
Yes, and keep up the amazing work, Alex, with all the content you've created so far and you're creating right now. I think you're making a huge impact. So well done, and good luck to you in the future as well.
Thank you so much. And Diana and George, I can just give that compliment back. I think you're making really a different show here, reaching so many people. Thank you
Much
so much.
appreciated. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, and thanks